myself, Ron Cecil, Cutting for Sign, episode 38.
Yeah.
Daniel Popper. I'm really excited about this. He was like on my radar before we started this podcast. And then the moment we started this podcast, I was like, hell yeah, we got to get a hold of this guy. And here we are, like nearly a year later from the first moment I like wanted him on. And we had to work hard to keep that ball rolling. And here he comes.
The story in my head is that he's the first person we asked.
Pretty close, like very close to the beginning. Yeah, for sure.
And now a year later, like,
yeah,
it's happening.
The payoff's happening.
I heard he's excited. His assistant we've been messaging it, and it sounds like he's really excited about this conversation.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. I got to see right after he and I communicated last year, just coincidentally, I ended up in Talum with Morgan on a little romantic trip and got to see his piece there. And it's profound. Like it was
really,
there's a lot of thoughtfulness. You know, you as an artist and me as a patron of the arts. I
mean, you're a writer.
I'm a writer.
That's art. I'm always confused. Okay, let me ask this real quick. Just a side note. When someone says, I'm an artist, is that supposed to mean they're a painter?
That's a good question. I don't think so. When I hear someone say I'm an artist, I think it's like anything, but artists and writers are different. Someone says I'm a writer, I'm like, oh yeah, cool.
Well,
or
I
poet
think
or whatever.
That's ridiculous. Like you are 100% an artist based on the stuff that I've read of yours. You're creating fiction. You know, and I'm not saying you have to create fiction to be an artist, but it's like if you're creating fiction, that's painting on paper. That's painting with words.
Oh, yeah. Just wait what I'm coming up with now, man. I'm hot right now. Feels so good. What's coming out of me is like, shit, yes, this is good.
You're an artist.
Back to Daniel. You know, when you're around art, that's like, this is something different. There's murals, right? And I don't want to like knock anyone's murals, but like there's just something like you get around something that feels like it's beyond just the aesthetic. There's like a statement to it. There's like a line in the sand kind of thing.
Yeah.
I got that feeling around it. And I think he's probably, I mean, I would imagine one of the most photographed artists like in this era right now because of where he puts his pieces. They're in very public places. And as an installation artist, they're like, you know, there are festivals and hotels and public spaces, and his work in Chicago is like kind of on the, you know, edge of this park and like tucked in all these like cute like little wilderness areas. And I think that's really magical.
I mean, he's singular, undoubtedly. His stuff
for sure.
It's like I was showing it to somebody yesterday.
Yeah.
And he's also really well connected. Like the friend that I showed it to yesterday started following him on Instagram. And then
really?
As he looked, my friend goes, oh my God, like all these other artists I know already follow him. You know?
Yeah.
And then my friend, he's a very thoughtful kid, and he goes, I don't even know what I'm looking at. Is that a tree? Did he sculpt that? You know what I mean? It's that unique.
He reminds me a little bit in some ways of that. I'm gonna mess his name up, so I'm gonna not say that actually.
I love when you mess names.
Well, there was a sculptor. There was a sculptor in the late '90s, early 2000s. Andy, I think. Andrew, could be wrong. Goldberg, maybe. Anyway, he did these installations outside that were like spectrums of color with leaves that he picked up off the ground, and would make these like insane balancing rock sculptures with found rocks, and that are meant to be temporary. Like they're there, and then, you know, in a matter of moments they get knocked down or blown away. I was pretty obsessed with that guy. But they have a similar sense in that it is in a natural setting, but an unnatural or human made or artistic design or fabrication, and it's surprising. It's delightful and it's surprising.
That's a good definition of art.
Yeah.
Which is probably one of the earliest forms of art. If you're thinking about it, was probably just people moving shit around in nature, you know?
Yeah.
You know, let me make a little shape with these rocks, you know, and then that stuff of course didn't last.
Dude, I was thinking about that on my hunting trip, about how when you're outside, there are no right angles. right? Like it's really difficult to find a right angle in nature. Like, of course, it happens on with rocks and things like that every once in a while.
Kind of accidentally. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, but then if you take two fallen logs and put them together, you suddenly have a right angle. Like you could make a square or a rectangle really fast. And I thought, I wonder what that was like for our ancestors.
Like when they saw one.
When they saw one or realized they could make the structure, right? Like suddenly nature gives you the pieces of something that's beyond what nature was doing.
There is so much that happened in human history that we're never going to know. That, you know what I mean? Like all these, I always think about this is there's a thought about a story that I've had for many years. And it's not really a specific story, but there's so much action and love and little moments like what you're talking about, and the birth of art, not the birth, but the like entire conception and gestation period of art for millions of years. Human emotion, human brain, human story, dramas, war, love, loss that happened through people who had language that was still being formed, and maybe it was more sounds instead of like sounds with specific bites of meaning.
Right.
And I just think it's all lost. It's gone. Like it's an inordinate amount of story and emotion and experience. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
I just find that fascinating, and I think that could be explored in film.
Did you see The Cave? You heard of that film?
No.
It's kind of sorry?
Is it? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
It's a documentary about the cave drawings in France.
Oh, that's cool. I have seen. I mean, I've seen one of those documentaries, and
I mean, that was like, there are tens of thousands of years between some of the drawings.
Yeah. That's my next series that I'm gonna do. The apotheosis of myself as an artist, as a painter, is going to be. I have this idea to do cave painting inspired paintings.
Oh wow!
Like you take the memories. It's a bendy time idea, but like you take the things that happened early in your life, images, and then you paint them as if they're cave paintings and ancient.
Interesting.
Because if our whole life is like our whole world potentially, or our whole history, then what happened when we were really young is kind of personally ancient. You know what I mean?
Dude, we're gonna come back to this in the
Daniel here,
because Daniel's here.
Yeah,
I'm excited about this. All right, let's do it.
Daniel Popper, you are a multidisciplinary artist from Cape Town, South Africa, known globally for your larger-than-life art that blurs the lines between interactive art, sculpture, installation, and stage and interior design. Many of your projects include collaborations with other artists and technicians to incorporate electronic music, lighting, and projection mapping. You are most acclaimed for your massive public art installations at places such as the Boom Festival in Portugal, Afrikaburn in the Tankwa Karoo in South Africa, the Human Nature exhibition at the Morton Arboretum in Chicago, and the Venala Luz sculpture in Talum. You build both temporary and permanent pieces, including a commission for a sculpture that now stands as a defining feature for the Nelson Mandela School of Science and Technology. You are also founder of Pop Productions, a production company for concept design, innovative advertising, brand activation, and stage design. You value authentic collaborations, your art having a positive impact in the world, the belief that we are more connected with nature than we often think, and growing together as both a collective and as individuals. Welcome, Daniel Popper. All right.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you're here, man. We were just discussing a moment ago that the way you and I connected was you reached out to me about your own experience in the hero's journey and how it's been kind of a lone wolf's journey for you. I'm interested in has that moment along the hero's journey happened to you where you personally have had kind of a mentor, guide, spirit guide, which is either in the form of a person or, I don't know, the muse or something that has helped you along this journey. Are you familiar with that idea in the hero's journey of having them? Yeah.
I am. There's been a lot of a lot of people along the journey that have facilitated the journey. So there's been some incredible clients along the way that saw something in me and gave me the opportunity to do what I do, so I always think about the role that those guys played, you know, but I'm not sure if they are the mentors. I feel like they're the ones that sort of just, you know, they sort of made the offer, and so the call was there, and it was up to me to take it, you know, to take it up. So
would you say that? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just curious regarding the call. Like, would you say that you're a person who, you know, there's a couple ways the hero's journey can start, as I understand it. One is denial of the call, or answering of the call and being forced into the call. There's like a few. What would you say? Are you? Yeah.
I mean, you know, certainly on the art projects that I've done, you know, those were definitely answering the call. I think now I'm at a phase right now, actually, strangely, yesterday was having a conversation about turning down a lot of those calls, you know, and what that means now for me, you know, like saying no to a lot of it, because in the beginning it was like, how do I make a career out of this? So you say yes, you like take the opportunities that are given to me and blast off, like do as much, you know, go as hard as I can. Now I've got I get all these requests all the time, and it's about learning how to navigate that and which ones to say no to and which ones to go for. So that's interesting. I mean, in terms of like mentorship or guidance, that has always been a thing, because you know, I was always looking for who it is, you know, who's that mentor going to be. And I would often ask people along the way, and you know, for their advice. And it was interesting, because there was never any one person before me who did this who I could always call up and be like, yeah, how do I do this? What I do? But you know, I'd always call friends or people like that to bounce around, you know, interesting or difficult circumstances with. But at the end of the day, it is a lone journey. It is a solo journey, no doubt. You know.
Do you have any kind of spiritual practice that you participate in as your part of like personal life?
I've done many, you know, I've done many. I've gone through the psychedelic phase of all that stuff in my earlier years, like sort of like earlier 30s, late 20s. So, you know, experimented with all of that. Then I, you know, did the meditation thing as well, you know, Vipassana meditation and sort of Buddhist spiritual practice. It's always a thing that I have, like when I start to feel a little bit too untethered, you know, I'll come back to that practice.
I'm just curious, a real quick pause on that. When you say untethered, what does that look like for you? And is it like serious, you know, like, do you really ever have a time in your life where, I guess, where you're, I wouldn't say lost, but like how bad does that get? You know what I mean?
It can get pretty intense. So like, you know, especially when I'm on jobs. So, I mean, I'll just give you like a little picture of my life, because it's slightly different. Like, you know, for example, like some of my best mates, you know, they have jobs, have jobs. They wake up, they say goodbye to the wife and kids. They maybe drop the kid off at school, and then they're off to work, and they work inside, you know, a factory or an office or whatever. You know, they're a lawyer or whatever, and then they come home from work, and there's dinner, and then it's good night kids, and then it's with the wife and whatever. And I'm not saying that those daily routines also don't come with their challenges, because within that there's all those sort of microcosms of complexity. But my life is so radically different, because I'll go through studio time, and so we'll get back to this. I just put a pin in this, but I knew that it was happening when it was happening. But I said to my wife and, you know, and myself at the time, I was like, during COVID, when all the sort of projects got stalled for an entire year, and we had a routine life, I was like, I think I'm going to look back at this as the best time of my life. Like, and you know, because the beginning was like, holy shit, like there's no work, a bit of a freak out. And then I got into this like rhythm and this routine, and like I was doing almost the same thing every day, and like this crazy shit started to happen. And I knew that it was the best time of my life. But now, like that, since that ended, I mean, this year, you know, in 1 year we flew to Miami. I did a project in Miami. Then we went to Boulder, Colorado. I was in Boulder, Colorado for like 3 months, working in a studio there. Then we left. Then it was installations. I was living out of a hotel room for 2 months. My wife and little girl came with me. We lived in like a Hyatt hotel room for like 2 months in Chicago. Then we left there. Then I went to Vegas. And then it's like always, so literally since then I haven't unpacked my bags. Like my suit, I've just been living out of a suitcase every day. New projects coming in, like trying to deal with those, trying to stay creatively like fit, trying to stay on top of stuff. And then just like sort of pushing all of that stuff aside, getting stuck into like being physically on site and building like with my own hands. So there's like, it's a completely different practice, because now you're literally, you're just mixing like concrete. You're not like you're not in the dream space, you're not in the imagination space, you're in the like bricks and mortar, like no, seriously, like and some of it is very laborious, some of it's very physical, like carrying bags of concrete like outside of pickup trucks and stuff like that. So there's you're in that zone, which is great, because I always feel like it's in those times, it's in that space, if you allow like the creativity seeps through in those spaces. So like going for walks are like super important, because it's when you're not thinking about the thing, when you're not looking directly at it, it seeps through. So that's why I always kind of enjoy that space. Then it's back, and then it's dealing with the business, trying to run the business, dealing with clients, dealing with like all the back end stuff, like taxes, all this other shit. You know what I mean? So like it gets a bit like wild. It gets a bit wild, and like I think like the day in the life of some of these like major like CEOs as well, because it's just like each day comes with new crazy shit to like have to deal with, and you can get into a rhythm of dealing with crazy shit, because it's like, there's a lightsaber and just trying to like bat stuff off or like whatever. But the real actual magic happens being in that routine space, and getting so like it's like creatively fit. It's like people say, don't you get creatively blocked or whatever? And like I totally do. And when I'm in that space, and when I'm not nurturing or giving time to like creating the art that I want to create, and I'm stuck too much in the running of the business or all that stuff, then I become an absolute moody bastard, and I'm like just things start to get very unpleasant for me, because I'm just like then I'm feeling completely untethered, because then you can look around, you're like, okay, cool, so I'm making all this cool stuff happen, and there's business, and I'm running, and I've got staff and all this stuff, but like, is this really what I want to be doing?
It's like
you start questioning it, and then it's suddenly it's not cool.
I think
so you got to do the work.
I think about there's that Jungian idea of the persona. Something I think about a lot is just that's a lens that I've chosen, Daniel, for how I look at the world and my psyche and some of the experience. I know there's a lot of lenses, but Jungian psychology tends to work for me.
Sure,
and
me
so,
too.
the idea of the shadow and the ego and the anima and animus, and then the persona. And it's really interesting as I've gotten more acutely aware of that idea of a persona as a mask or a personality that we put on subconsciously, instantly, when anybody pretty much is around us, and most acutely when we're around a lot of people. And it's just like it's one of the reasons as I'm putting pieces together that I think we get exhausted being around people and we just want some alone time, is because that mask, that personality can drop away, and we can potentially be other aspects of our psyche, And I wonder if that's a little bit of what you're talking about.
No, I think so, definitely. So the piece I did for Modem Festival in Croatia with the statue pulling its face off.
Yes.
That was
the same one on your
that's inspired.
That was the inspired by the persona, by the Jungian concept of the persona.
Awesome. So, I think it's really important for people to, like, in my opinion, it has been for me at least, to just have a little conceptualization of, when I'm around people, maybe in subtle ways, my personality is a little bit different,
Sure. So that's why, it's important, like you said, I'll feel like shit's getting, I'm getting lost in this, I'm getting lost in the, on the other side,
sure.
and then I have to bring it back, and then bringing it back requires all that extra work. You got to do it all. You got to meditate, you got to go to the gym, you got to work out, you got to like, bust your ass, like, sweat.
Well, Ron was talking about before you hopped on the cave, the documentary, The Cave, about the ancient cave paintings. And I personally am, fascinated might be a little bit much. They're obviously fascinating, but I really have been planning for some time to do a painting series that explores that idea of cave paintings. And then Ronald and I talk a lot about the different stages of not different stages, but the idea of how to come back into ourselves and reground, recenter. And I'm curious if you have, maybe you just said it, meditation, but, and same question for you, Ronald, like a quiet place where it's incubative for ideas and it's peace. You know what I mean? Do you have a situation like that?
No, I mean, definitely. I think when like during COVID, like when I've got the time and I can really get into that whole thing, then I get into the whole practice. I'm on the daily routines and I'm doing all the good things. And Cape Town, South Africa offers you like the best because it's got like that cold water. So you can go for a morning walk, jump in the freezing cold Atlantic Ocean, start your day like that, journal a little bit, or like, get a personal trainer, get someone to kick your ass, like sweat it out. And then, start journaling and then start sketching in the morning. I do like 30 minutes, 45 minutes of just like, drawing, like letting it go. And then, and then I'll start work like sculpting and sculpting practice as well. So it's like dedicating time of the day. I think what's that book, the deep work. I was trying to do that. I was like, okay, cool. Let's do some deep work. But it's also weird because there's work for money, and I'm like, this work that I got to do because I got a contract to produce this thing. And then there's the other work, which is like, what would I sculpt or what kind of art would I create if I didn't have to worry about that? So that's
one is for your soul.
That's the ideal scenario, when now, like the kind of lifestyle I'm in now, like Sunday night I leave, I go to Vegas and we're on tour blasting it for like the next 6-7 weeks. If shit gets crazy, then it's literally just a morning walk and like a journal session. It's the best I could do.
You feel yourself kind of hitting the red line when you're doing that?
Totally.
Totally.
Unhesitatingly.
How do you navigate that? Because I mean, you're in a unique position where the demand on your life is beyond what most people experience. Even someone who's got a high powered leadership position in a company or something, because you're not only have the creative demand on you, which I think is probably one of the toughest demands that a person could go through mentally, because it's like you have to think of things that have never been thought before, creatively, and the demand is on you. Like, hey, it's similar to somebody coming up to a comedian and saying something dumb, like, be funny, say something funny.
So that's the thing, because the creative process is a non-linear one, which that's what I keep trying to explain to my team. So now, like, we've taken on a bunch of projects for next year, like such exciting projects, like the spaces and the clients are just exactly what I've manifested.
Wow.
But it's like on demand. So it's like, be creative and come up with a cool idea now. And I'm like, oh my God, I need some space to make this happen, because it's like the best is when I'm sitting in that space and I'm like, okay, I'm creating this piece, not for anyone or anything, just for myself. Then I make that. And then I can say, okay, this is what I want to make. And I'll show that to the client, I'll be like, this is it, and then they get on board with me on that. But I totally hit those red lines. I mean, I've got partners as well. I got 2 boys. They've been with me for the last 10 years. So, and we're going through all of this together. So, that, 2 years ago, I think, when I messaged you like that, these guys are like, they're my brothers in this whole thing. So we go through all of it together at the same time. They're not carrying as much in terms of the creativity side of things and the running of the business, but they are definitely, their roles are the more on the sort of installation side of things. So like the technical engineering and whatever. So they also have their hands full, but we're all building together. Like we're all on site and we're all in the trenches together. So at least, you have people we can cry with. It makes it.
You need a good cry. Daniel and I have a good cry together once in a while.
That's been one of the most powerful things I've experienced in my life, is my friendship with Ronald. Because I've worked collaboratively with some really close friends, but it was always maybe top 6 or 7 months, you know. And to do something that is, I mean, we're in our 11th month and there's no end in sight, and we don't want an end in sight. And just to go through the growth, because you start to grow individually, of course, like you were talking about growing collectively and individually, which I love that. And Ronald and I's like path in life, like our personal heroes' journeys, our stories, they've been continuing, and while we've been communicating many times a day, and almost like we find that they're like synced up, and he'll go through something very unique to him, I'll go through something very unique to me, but we're kind of going through the same inner experience. You know what I mean? It's manifesting in different ways, and we'll hit thresholds together and we'll get through them. Do you know what I mean? And do you get that experience with your team?
Yeah, no, definitely, man. And you know, because these guys in 2019 actually they were running their own business in South Africa, and it was really struggling, their business. And like one of their reasons for it struggling was because they kept coming with, you know, joining the circus with me every now and again. And their business was then, you know, so they sort of, for that year, they were like, we're going to just put our heads down and put all our energy into our business, and we're not going to leave, and, you know, we're going to grow it. And so they did, and they tried. And then that year I went and I got a whole new crew of people, and, you know, started again. And I got the jobs done. We did some amazing projects, but like there was just not that, you know, I didn't have that sense of familiarity. I just trained guys from the beginning. There wasn't a connection there. They were simply just working for me. And it was so unenjoyable. I can't tell you. Like, it made it so much harder, because I was also then felt like I was babysitting this team as well, and I had to be their leader. You know, as these guys, I'm not their leader. We brothers, and we work together with the same goal in mind. So it makes it a whole different, you know, thing.
Let me ask you one more question about art. I'm curious. One thing that I personally am doing is I'm going to be getting some schooling in art, which I've never done. And I met with one of the professors the other day, and he said, we're going to strip down all your habits and your process, and we're going to get things to be able to grow from a new, fresh place. Like, basically, we're just to strip all your habits down and help you recreate yourself as artists. Do you go through that process yourself? Was there one big version of that? Did you ever have to? Do you hope to?
It's interesting. So I think I'm getting very close to the edge of having to go through that whole process again.
Really?
But
tell us about that.
Because otherwise I get bored. But I mean, in the beginning, so I studied painting. I studied fine arts. I went through the academic process of the whole thing. Hated it. Was confused by it. But then at the end decided to I was like, maybe I'm just resisting this, and I went full on into painting as like this contemporary art medium.
You just hated painting, or you hated some of the stuff that they were
just the whole idea, because it was like this contemporary art. So you were learning about you know, because in the academic world, they they take you down. It's like art history all the way to now, and then what does it mean? What is painting now? You know. Because painting was this old tradition, you know, from the Renaissance. So what does it become? What does it mean to be a painter? You know, for example, you know, one kid in my class, he was doing painting, and his final year painting was he had taken a canvas and he had unraveled it thread by thread and then started reweaving it on a loom.
Whoa.
Yeah, that was his painting. So I got it you know, on an academic level, sure, I can go there to understand it. On a soul level, heart, mind, I was like, what the fuck is this shit? Sorry. You know,
it's not accessible.
You know, and there was no learning about the real core things like composition, color, ways of seeing, ways of looking, ways of understanding what's successful and why. So you would go and see these things, and I mean, you know, so for example, the abstract expressionists, you know, some of that stuff, you know, people you know, people don't understand when they look at Rothko or Pollock or all these paintings, whatever, but you got to get into understanding what they are. But in the end of the day, there's a lot of academia there backing it up. And then especially with contemporary painting. So I went there, I got into it. I started like writing the thesis on the why and getting all deep into like, you know, trying to understand it. But I also was battling my lecturers because they were all, that guy who did the unraveling, reweaving shit, he won the art prize in school, you know. So
is
and there
is this
the
guy that's just sold $83,000 of blank canvases to a museum? And
same bullshit, you know. So I was the guy like in my studio mixing colors, like mixing oil paints on a, you know, like on a palette, like trying to understand like the oil painting. And so it was a battle for me, I won't lie. And I came out of art school and I decided to give it a shot, and I started doing gallery shows and whatever. My poor parents were traumatized. They were just like, oh my God, this guy, you know, he's gonna be starving the rest of his life. Like, because I was also, you know, these paintings were like, they were quite loaded subject matter and full of like academic, like, so to the average person, like, well, like my parents who don't look at much art, they're not academics. They would look at these paintings and just like be like, what is this kid like doing? You know? But then I started moving away from that, and I started trying to just like go back to like doing portraiture because that was stuff that I loved, whatever. And eventually, like, I just couldn't deal with the contemporary art world. I mean, there's maybe a number of reasons why, like, you know, maybe a harsher art critic would say maybe I wasn't cut out for it. But at the end of the day, I just, you know, I did take a step back, you know, after like, you know, psychedelics and all that stuff. And it was like, do I actually like do I enjoy it when I go to these contemporary art museums? Does the art that I'm seeing there resonate with me? Do I like being immersed in the academic idea and the sort of, you know, prefrontal cortex of what this art is? No. The answer was no. I didn't like it. It didn't do anything for my soul. It didn't do anything for me as a person. You know, academia is cool, but it didn't float my boat. Like, I've got friends, they love academia. That's their thing, you know? And so I just basically quit. I was like, I'm done. I'm not playing this game anymore. And then the Burning Man Festival came to South Africa. And then, you know, I went to that, and then I started like experimenting with other ways of art making. So I started doing like puppetry, sort of making these big puppets, and that got me into like thinking about how to make stuff. I never really made like sculpture, like physical things, because it was only just about like painting. And then it got me thinking into like public engagement or interaction with sculptures or art in a way that was totally different, because the people that were attending this festival were people taking psychedelics. They were people that weren't going to look at this art and trying to understand who made it and why they made it, and this whole history of all this stuff, you know. And that's when my brain flipped around, and I started doing this stuff, and it started doing it from my heart, because there was no intention for it to become a career. There was no intention for it to become a life. It was purely, I was like, this is it. This is, you know, if I die tomorrow, will I die happy by having expressed myself and given a gift of creativity to other people? And that was the thing. And then I just kept pulling on that thread, you know. You want to unravel a canvas, that was the one I chose to unravel, you know. And literally then it got me into stage design and production design and event stuff. So then it became a completely different thing. So like then it was like creating a stage or a platform for people at music festivals. It was completely separate to academic art training, and it moved all the way into the sort of entertainment arena. And then, you know, now I'm drawing upon experiences from both, you know. So I'm still not interested in the art world.
So you're saying you're getting kind of close to potentially having to, I guess, lack of a better term, reinvent yourself, strip yourself down. Couple of questions, or two-parted question. What does that look like? What might that look like? Do you even know? And then also, is that process tied to maybe personal inner sort of life issues that or situations or a state of being that you're in right now?
So I can tell you, if you had asked me in 10 years ago, so I was 27, I'm 37 now. If I was going to become a large scale sculpture artist and creating the sculptures that I'm sculpting now, there was no way. There was no way. It wasn't even there. It wasn't even a faint dot on the horizon. It was, I never had the skill set. So there was just no way. I wasn't a classically trained sculptor. I never knew how to sculpt. I never thought I was very good at it. I always thought I was better at like drawing and painting. So I was like, no way. the sculptures require like engineering and like serious like understanding of how things are built, you know. I mean, I could barely like put together an IKEA set, you know. So I wasn't very handy, you know. I actually still struggle with those IKEA sets, damn it. But you know, it was just not even a thing, you know. But slowly through just being interested in it, it got me to where I am now. And the thing that I think that drove the whole thing for me was this process of innovation. And I was still so interested. It's like, so then I started playing the game, because it moved from academic art making into an almost industrial design state of mind. So that's why my two partners, they're industrial designers, because we would always play the game, how is it made? And so I'd always look at things and be like, how do you think they made this? Like, what was the process behind making it? And I love doing that. I love looking at a thing and understanding like how it's made and wrapping my head around it. And that's when the innovation process happens. So like all these sculptures that I'm making now, for me, they're innovative. Yes, other people have done it, but like there was no one I could call. And there's no, hey, dude, how do I make? So I went to see like these guys that make these big sets, you know, like for movies and stuff like that. And I'd ask them, like, how would you do this? And no one had an answer for me.
Wow.
No one. They were like, I don't know how you do this. Like for set building, it's completely different because you're using cheap materials that you throw away like after the shot's done, you know. And so I had to figure it out. And there was a lot of like process of innovation and taking risks and doing tests and making samples and creating molds and seeing what happens with how the mold deteriorates and like all this cool stuff. So it got me to that place now. And now like, cool, now I've done it. Now I know how to do it. Now people are ordering those things. They want more of them. That's cool. We can do it. But now for me, it's like, what's the next process of innovation? Like how do I take all this that I've learned and just throw it in a meat grinder and see what you know,
have you heard of Zozobra in Santa Fe?
No.
So it started by an artist. You know, Santa Fe it's been around a long time. They say it's the oldest continually. It's been said it's been the capital of some people group since the 1100s.
Oh, okay.
And it's in northern New Mexico. It's where I met my wife from that state. And in the 20s, there was this influx of artists. George O'Keeffe was one of those artists who, you know, took up residence there. And there was a guy named Will Schuster. I don't know a ton about Will Schuster, but he was kind of the guy who decided to turn that town into an artist colony and kind of gave it its DNA that it has now. And in 1924, they started this thing called Zozobra. And Zozobra is like an old Spanish word, kind of like an old English word that means the quaking of a sheep before it is sheared. Okay. And they make this giant effigy that's, 100 feet tall or something. And they call him Old Man Gloom. And they spend a few days filling him with bad news. And it's literal bad news. It's people's like tax records. It's their divorce papers. It's the death certificate of a loved one. It's like all the things that as a community they're carrying and want to get rid of. And they literally fill it to the brim with that stuff. And then they have this giant kind of ceremony in the fall time, and then they light it on fire. Okay. And it's the largest gathering of people in the state of New Mexico at any given anytime. It's like bigger than any sporting event or anything like that. Wow. It's a big deal. It's been going on a long time. It kind of sounds like you're getting to a part like that where it's time to burn it all down, so to speak.
No, totally. I mean, it sounds similar concept to like the temple at Burning Man in a way.
Right.
But yeah, I mean that's really it. It's like so I'm getting to the point, but I'm also like it's I'm looking forward to a bit of space that I can get into breaking all of this stuff down, but like, for example, one of the big things that I'm now starting to question is like, why do these things have to be so big? What happens if I'm starting making smaller stuff,
Cool.
What would a gallery space look like for me if I were to enter back into it?
Returning back to the potentially this world that you left.
Yeah, but I'm just like, it's just, it's all about just that challenge and excitement. There's got to be this kind of like balance between, I always watch for that. There's just the right amount of challenge and just the right amount of innovation that gets my rocks off. If I know what I'm doing, like if I've done this, okay, I know the process, and I'm just doing another one. I tell you, it's really just, it's laborious work.
Yeah,
there's nothing about it that's, and then, that's just paying the bills. It's not like, and that's when I start trying to get like hire people in. I'm like, hire guys in, younger artists, whatever. I show them. I'm like, okay, do this, you do it. I know how it's done. This is how you do it. Show them how it's done. Get them to do it so that I can open up space to like start seeing what other interesting and weird things I can.
You mentioned manifesting a few minutes ago. Is that a formal process for you? Is that something you're thinking about throughout the day, all the above? Like, what is that when you say that? Because it's been mentioned a couple of times on this podcast by different people. Yeah. So what's your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's I've done it. It is a weird thing because, like I said, 10 years ago, I wasn't sitting in a room going like, I want to go forth and create like all these large sculptures and exhibit them around the world. That was not the image in my mind, but it would almost happen with each job. And then it was like, one of the major things was like trying to manifest living and being as an artist. I think it's one of the most difficult things you can do in this world. And I was just like, I'm going to do it. 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 It's a wild one. I mean, it's would I recommend it as a choice for a lot of other people? I'm not sure. It's not certainly not for everybody. It comes as its own weird set of unknowns, and it really is a wild hero's journey. Like the Stephen Pressfield book, The War of Art.
You mean this book right here on my desk?
Just that one. Just that one. But it is,
point.
That's the stitch, that's the serious, man. It's like a war zone every day.
Yeah. Man, okay. So you said you're gonna do it. And that is you're heeding the call, you're answering the call. And then immediately after that is going into the dark forest, going into the unknown territory, which sounds like you like to some extent.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. I think if you have a penchant for adventure, the unknown, difficulties in some way, they're on their way. What was the danger? What was the risk for you when you decided to heed your call?
Well, yeah. So I think, for me, like every dragon along the way is the sculpture. That's the thing, and the process of getting that thing to the end, and how I feel about it, like who won the battle. There's a lot of sculptures I've done where I was defeated, or I felt defeated. Other people look at it and be like, "Oh, that's amazing," and I'm like, "Thanks for saying that."
Why do you feel defeated? What would be like? Was it as simple as like it was over cost, or like?
There's so many elements. So for example, cost is a major one. And I think coming, now like we're starting to learn to budget correctly for these things and understand like the actual costs involved. Like some of them costs are insane, but I'll still push it. I'll still push it to the limit. And I'll still, I'll rinse every cent of that budget that I've got to to the nth degree. And then there's, I say to my guys, I'm like, there's jobs for show, and then, there's jobs for dough, and we do the jobs that we know we can make a good margin on. And, some of them are just like brand activation stuff, and it's cool. And then there's, we'll be given a space to create a piece of public art. And I'm like, I'm going all in on this one, Like, I just don't want to lose money, but then I'm all in. And the next thing I know, I'm like in the hole on the project. And so now you face with challenges. It's like, do we need to spend more money to like make this thing happen? And what is that going to be? And what's the cost of it? Like there were times where I didn't have the money to spend. So it wasn't even an option. It was like, okay, now I'm going to bankrupt myself. Is that, so then I would, and then like there were times, that Morton Arboretum job, things happened because of COVID, whatever, the costs ran way over way over.
Yeah.
I only found out closer to the end of that project where like my production manager came to show me the budget. She was like, you know, we 50K over budget here. And I was just like,
yeah,
you know, and thankfully she never showed it to me during, because it would have wrecked, because then all the choices that I was making would have been hindered by that, you know, because it was like, okay, you know what, we need to I need a sandblast. I don't like the paintwork I've done. I need a sandblasting machine. I'm blasting all the paintwork off. Blasted it all off, repainted the sculpture like 3 times till I was happy, you know. Spent thousands of dollars doing it, you know. I was like, if I knew I didn't have the money to spend, I wouldn't have done that. So I was kind of happy at the end, but it did feel like someone kicked me in the stomach. But you know, there'll be other projects where I'm on, like other sculptures where it's just, you're also pressed by time, because you can't stay on these things forever. You know, it's like, I got to be complete. We got a deadline. I got to leave. I got to get to the next job, whatever. Some of them are nicer where it's a little bit open-ended, where it's like, okay, if I'm not finished, I can always come back and finish it, but I kind of do want to be done. The worst are when there's an event, it's a festival. There's no getting away from that deadline. That is like the gates are opening. You got to be finished, you know? And so certain things will happen during the creative process. And because you got to rush through them, it might be in your favor. Like the genie might be with you, and it's like, okay, cool. And then you like stand back, you're like, holy shit, if I had too much time to think about how to do that, I probably would have messed it up. But then there's other times where it's just like, I didn't get the time that I needed or wanted to spend making this thing beautiful as I knew I could have had the potential to, and I had to just surrender, you know.
Wow.
Daniel,
it is what it is.
Can I ask you a question? I just wanted to ask this before. I know you have a 9:30 pretty hard out, so we've got about 10 minutes. I wanted to ask you about that comment. I was watching one of your other videos where you were speaking about nature, and you mentioned that you believe that we are more connected with nature than we think, and I think that's an interesting topic to explore. Curious if you could speak a little bit to that.
Sure. I mean, you know, when I was doing that Arboretum exhibition, you know, I was thinking a lot about it. But, you know, do you guys you read much of John Muir's work and his quotes? Definitely somebody to check out.
I'm familiar with his work, but I've not read.
I hiked the John Muir trail, but I didn't.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You know, he's got some incredible quotes and stuff like that. But, you know, like one of the things, you know, one of the quotes that always stuck with me, it was like, it was what is it? It was in order to go out, you must go within. Something like that. So in order to go out, we must go within. You know, and what he was saying was like just drawing this parallel of like, you know, the sort of external and internal worlds and how closely related they are, and you know, going outside and spending a day in nature, what it does for your psyche, and how, you know, the sort of like internal garden that you have going on inside you, you know, that needs constant watering and maintenance, and just, you know, that I've always been inspired by that idea. I think that's a pretty cool idea.
You know, on that note, you might appreciate this, since we were talking about Jungian psychology, is another idea that he had, and some say it was like the big idea that he had. It's at the center of his work, is a process called individuation.
Yes.
Have you heard of that term?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I know a lot about Jung. Yeah.
As I understand it, it essentially means, for listeners, making your inner and outer world, or the experience of your inner and outer world, becoming more one world instead of being separate. And then we can go into the idea of what an inner world is, and so we kind of know what ours. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's really what this whole process has been about. You know?
Awesome.
And for me, deciding and choosing, I'm going to go and be an artist, and that's going to be my life. What has been the process of individuation, and that's why, like in this art making process, it's all about me feeling like I'm individuating. Because now, if I were to just, so you see a lot of artists when they get into becoming like it becomes about commerce, right? So they create a brand, and then they're just creating products, and they just continue to create those stuff. So that's cool, and that's, you know, it's entrepreneurial, and it exists in a certain archetype. You know, it exists in the businessman archetype, but it doesn't. You know, it's the process of individuation is about, you know, constantly digging through the weeds and going deep and digging down into the cave and pulling out the jewels, like fighting those battles and coming out and see, and that's why, now I'm at that process where I'm just like, okay, well, what's the next process? What's the next process going to be for me?
You mentioned Stephen Pressfield. What's resistance like for you?
Oh.
How does that come up for you in your life?
Oh my God. And like he says, it's crazy, man. It's literally in any kind of way that it will find, in any way that it will find, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a constant battle, but the other interesting thing now is also, it's like, learning to be disciplined with work, but the major thing is learning to be disciplined in my relationship with my wife and my daughter. I've got another daughter on the way. She's arriving in January, man.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, man. But it's like it's cool, like like understanding that journaling, going for walks, and being immersed in the creative process is part of my work. So like it took me a while to because I was like, well, I could sit down and journal, or I could play with my kid and spend time with my wife. And it was like, learning to navigate that, so that, because then I would like give up journaling and whatever, because it'd be like, oh, this is family time. But then no, you have to have work time, and you have to have family time, and you have to be disciplined. Or not only that, just learning to like, okay, well, if work ends at a certain time, then it's done for the day. Now I must give my full attention and energy to my partner and to my kid. But I still haven't mastered that art, because it's so hard for me to turn off, man. I'll say my day ends at 5 p.m. or whatever, which it doesn't, but say it did or whatever, then I'm with my wife and I've got to be like, okay, it's done now. The phone is off. The whole brain needs to be switched off from, trying to think of the problem, solve what's happening there. It's difficult.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I think it's a really common trait among high achievers that once the brain is working towards that thing, the brain doesn't want to stop working towards that thing.
Yeah.
And even as much love and kindness and the payoff, the emotional payoff it is to be with family, there's still some part of your brain that wants to, keep that tab open and continue to run that stuff.
Yeah.
How old is your oldest daughter?
She's 3.
Nice. Yeah. What's that process been like for you as a dad? I mean, how's that? I mean, I think when we become fathers, there's a lot of expectations we feel, right? Like, I need to be this and that and these other things.
Totally.
And then we think that having a kid will somehow give us magical powers to achieve those things.
Yeah.
Then we find out that is not true.
What I've learned from it is like, I see some of my friends that like have a natural gift at being a parent. And they're kind of born to be parents. Right. And they're like, my wife, for example, she's just like naturally an unbelievable mom. I have women friends of mine that they struggled with the concept because they thought that it would come naturally to them, and they're like, oh, I don't know what the fuck to do. And then I've got guy friends of mine as well. They have the gift or the art of communicating with young children, and they just so good at it. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm doing. So I kind of was like, up until now, I sort of was like, listen, just keep the kid alive. Let's start there. So if I can keep my kid alive, I'm doing a great job. Keep the kid alive and sort of just be around. And it's interesting because that was it. And then also through all the work, and then I was like, going through, which I tell you, I've now learned, it's like 98% of dads go through this, but like the kid, they're only interested in mom in those first few years. Mm-hmm. And now she's 3, now she's a toddler, now you're able to communicate. And now I'm suddenly learning like, oh shit, okay, hold on. There's a whole psychological art form of like how to communicate with the children. So now I've moved out of keeping her alive phase into like having to learn how to be like a real parent phase. So this is my next year I'm on trying to figure this one out.
That's awesome, man. Well, I've got a son who's 15 now, and honestly it's still the same, like keep him alive. That's my number one goal. He's into some adventurous shit and does dangerous things, and I want him to continue to do those things. I didn't know I had an anger problem, and I mean like a real anger problem, until I had a child. And then it was the mirror, this young person who was a perfect mirror of my insecurities and my shortcomings that brought all that stuff to the surface. and I didn't know how to handle. I thought I'd be a good dad, it was a serious challenge. And the real turning point was when I learned how to apologize to him, to his face, and tell him that it wasn't okay for me to fly off the handle or go into a rage or any of those things.
Yeah.
Remember,
and it's go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, just real quick on Daniel, we had this guest on named Nick Herndon, and he had a really interesting story. He was set on fire as a child, and it was a very intense thing that happened to him. Obviously, there was a film made about it. But one thing that he does that me and Ronald really touched us is that he writes letters to his children, and they will oftentimes be apologetic or they'll be very encouraging. He really communicates in this very sweet way through writing. And I think Ronald is kind of, during that conversation, we talked about that idea of parents who can be accountable to their children. I value that so much. I think that's
sure. Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, it's great to meet you guys, because I'm sure I'll be hitting you up now, because that's one thing I'm craving, is just like other brothers going through these similar stories, or like, mentorship in parenthood. I think there's not enough out there. It's not like, honestly, I like even try and Google it, and it's like, there's like weird courses with some like kooky people, but it's like, no, man, I'm actually looking for like brotherhood, like people who have gone through like being fathers and like being them in their best way without any like weird Jesus stuff. Like, like psychologically, like how do we do this thing, and how do we, and learning like the art of like communication and like, and doing that work, so we don't lose our minds, and how to like, okay, what's happening now? I'm like reaching boiling point. What do I do? How do I, de-escalate this kind of stuff? I'll take any advice you guys have to offer.
That's awesome, man.
Not advising, but just shining light on things that people do right. And thinking outside of the box as a parent, like, anyways, I know it's time to go, but sounds like we could talk a long time.
Yeah, Daniel,
I could talk to you guys all day.
I know, man. I know. Let's continue this conversation at some point, Daniel. Thanks for showing up, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I got to see some of your work in Talum last November, and it's
awesome, man.
It's good stuff. It's profound, man. I like it's special to be around. It's special to have you here. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to more. And I'm looking forward to continue talking, man. Take care of yourself.
For
sure, guys. All right, man. Well, we'll check in again. I'll be happy to come back on your podcast anytime.
Awesome, dude.
Thank you, sir.
Take care, man.
All right, guys.
Bye-bye.
Awesome. All the best.
All right. Bye.
Awesome field dressing, episode 38, Daniel Popper. Awesome. Yeah, that was a good one, man. Yeah. Did you notice he was sketching the whole time we were talking?
Is that what he was doing?
Yeah. He had a stylus, an electric stylus, and I'm assuming he had he was working on like an electric, an iPad or whatever. There's all kinds of different products people can do art on.
At first, I thought he was on his phone. which whatever. I mean, do what you gotta do.
He was playing Words with Friends.
Because every time that someone else would start to speak, he would go back to it. And I was like, dude's running a big company. I get it. You got emails to address. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. That, man, I love hearing that story. Really, the one where he said, he went through a spiritual transformation with the help of psychedelics, and we didn't, and that could have been the whole episode. We could have talked about that alone. And he came to a decision in his life, which was, I'm not going to continue to take the safe path. I'm going to go into the unknown, because that's my true heart and soul. And I think all of us are at some point in our life presented with that option. And I honestly don't think it goes away ever. The stakes just get higher as you go on. And he at that moment said, I'm going in at the cost of whatever.
Yeah.
And he went in hot pursuit of his soul and his creativity and his relationship to the muse, and without any expectation of success or money or notoriety. And all those things are now kind of like a byproduct of him honoring himself and honoring that real desire in his journey. That I found for me personally, like really challenging, because I thought, am I risking enough? Am I going for it hard, like as hard?
Yeah. Like we have to these days, and maybe it's been like this for a long time in these bodies we've been walking around in for millions of years, but it seems like these days we have to self-impose threat confrontations with thresholds, trying the line. There's the term I'm looking for, not rituals, but what is the thing that you do that when you're done?
Rite of passage?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Rites of passage, and a lot of people say, well, there's no rites of passage with men and with people anymore. And it's like, okay, pump the brakes. There's still a lot of rites of passage out there. I think high school and college, these are legitimate rites of passage.
Yeah.
At the same time, they can get, it seems, watered down, become commercialized, and there isn't really an inner change,
Yeah.
And so what are some rites of passage where it really, I've been watching sports lately, and like last night was game 5, Giants Dodgers, huge game, 2 best teams in baseball. And I was like, how nerve-wracking that would be. There's no going back. You have to perform, you have to go forward. It's a real trying the line. There's a lot on the line emotionally and in a lot of ways. And I just think, how as like a normal person in this world can I create a rite of passage that will change me potentially if I don't fail? Because like, it's okay to fail. Like failure is a thing in the world,
Yeah.
And what is one that's appropriate, that is guided, that is aligned with who I am and who I want to become? I think that for me, going to school potentially could be one,
Sure,
because it's done in a different way now. But what do you think about that?
Well, we'll use Daniel as an example. I think there are rite of passages that we can experience as a young person that are kind of like training wheel rites of passages.
Yeah.
It's achieving something as a young person that takes you through difficulty, and you get some help in it, and you feel the glow of success. I think a real rite of passage, like a true one, is the kind that there is actual risk involved.
Yeah, totally.
There's actual risk.
Totally.
And you have to be willing to accept the terms of that risk in order for the transformation to be complete. And I think he mentioned that a little bit. He used the word bankrupt, the risk of going bankrupt.
Yeah, that's
right?
A risk.
Yeah, it's a huge risk. And I think that's, I'm only quiet because there's like a ton on my mind around this. And I think about this stuff a lot, Daniel. Like this is on my mind a lot, especially as my son's turning, he's 15, and I'm thinking about his journey in life and how do you prepare a person to dig deep when there's like the way out is you, right? I was told a long time ago that and I probably mentioned this on here, like the ticket to the outdoors is fitness. Like you've got to be fit if you want to be outdoors, if that's your place. And I think in any of it, it's like there's a need to have a skill and a talent that's combined, right? That's this innate part of you. And you've got to like learn how to work that and learn how to grow it in the face of some kind of adversary, whether it's like a point in time, a project, a person, probably not very often a person, unless you're a codependent and trying to get out of a bad relationship. But I think rites of passages are those moments like you need difficulty. Like I heard someone say the other day that we have ancestral potential locked in us. We are this unbroken chain of success from our ancestors.
Yeah.
And all their potential is locked in us. And the only way it comes out is through difficulty and hardship. Wow. But a conscious relationship with difficulty and hardship. Because there's one part of you that could go, fuck this sucks. These people suck. That sucks. Everything would be better if this wasn't so bad. and you just are resistant to the change that it could bring you, and the type of character and quality that could be unearthed in you if you allowed it. And I think there is like, we'll use, fucking Star Wars as an example. Like Luke didn't want to join this problem, right? And he continued to be called into it. He wanted to go do his own life. And it was like life was outside of him. And suddenly there's this thing that's like interrupting his life. And Obi-Wan's like, come on, man, like we got to go do this. And he's like, no,
I mean, we got to put the right point on that. Luke desperately wanted to join. That was a different one. He wanted it so fucking bad. He didn't want to be just a farm boy. You know what I mean?
Well, I thought he wanted to take off. I thought he didn't want to deal with the Empire. Like he's like, no, that's
really did. No, he totally did.
Oh, really? I fucked.
He couldn't fucking wait. That's all right. That's why I wanted to make a little correction. But I hear you, and that's totally true. Like I think that regarding rites of passage, how do we like? It's worth the time to think about a rite of passage that would be aligned with who you are inwardly and outwardly. The result of it would help you in life, significantly. Yeah. And that there's a lot on the line if you like, I know in the world people don't like the word failure. And I think that one of the reasons is like you can be okay with failure can be okay. And even in this context where it's like, if you fail, you're kind of fucked, it's like, I guess it depends on the severity of the rite of passage. Like some rites of passage, if you fail, you die, right? Yeah. But choosing one, like I said, like where it's appropriate, like maybe that a failure wouldn't completely take you out. It would just be a really hard thing to accept, and maybe it would set you back. But I think there's value in that, big time. And I'm very curious about that for myself, for people around me. And it sounds like, maybe rite of passage isn't even the exact thing we're talking about totally, but we're talking about thresholds, right? Yeah. You reach a threshold. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
Daniel seems to be at one of those. He's like, I've played this one out. I did a good job. And now it's time to reinvent, strip it down, give myself maybe not a rite of passage, but definitely an opportunity to cross an inner threshold again. Maybe one he's crossed before and he needs to cross it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think some of the rites of passages, I mean, traditional rite of passage is to signify like going from one stage of life to the next.
Yes.
And because we don't have that, we do need those moments that remind us I'm no longer the same person I was.
Definitely. Exactly.
Yeah. And I'm you need to know that you are now more capable, more wise.
Yeah.
You have the skills and the talents that have worked together in conjunction, and you have outside help. Like his relationship with his friends that are, two partners, or he calls them brothers. Like that shows you how deep his relationship with those guys creatively. And you need that. Like you need that help from outside of yourself in order to do something. When I went down to Yosemite to climb Half Dome, and my partner,
that was a rite of passage.
Oh, big time. And my partner, who I trained with for a year, couldn't go. I went down there expectant that I would find the right person. And here's the weird part. I don't know if I've ever said this on air. I had this real strong feeling. I flew down to Oakland. I rented a car. I had a business meeting I had to do from my car in Oakland. I was like parked outside of a Starbucks with Wi-Fi access, and I was on a conference call. And this is like some folks that I really shared a lot of like kind of emotional, spiritual intimacy with, even though we had a working relationship. And one of my mentors was like, she's like, why are you in a car? And I told her I was headed towards, to go climb, and what was going on. My partner wasn't gone. She's like, well, what are you going to do? You gonna climb it alone? I go, no. She goes, well, who's going to climb it with you? And I said, this is going to sound so weird, but I know, I can feel it, that he's going to be German.
Yeah.
She's like, okay. She didn't call me crazy. She just was like, she just jumped on board. And the two people I met who both assisted me, and I needed both of their help on there, were both German guys. And I don't know how I knew that. There's some way of knowing. My body somehow understood. And
I
that
love
was
that story.
man, it was like I knew it was all going to be okay the moment I met the first guy. Yeah.
The thing I like about that story that I think is worth sharing over and over is that you prepped for many months, a year, however long, your whole life in some way. And then
by the way, Timmy O'Neill just did that same climb with another guy. It took him longer than I did. that guy's done that thing like half his arm, an arm tied behind his back in like minutes. I mean, it's
so you just had to get your little jab in.
I had to, yeah.
What I liked about that is that it is very perfect and parallels aspects of the hero's journey, and that is that you prepped for all this time intentionally, you did a good job, and then right at the last minute you lost the person that the guy got sick or something injured, and he couldn't do it, and it's like, and then you were like, it's a sign not to do this. And sometimes there's signs that they're mean, we're talking cutting for sun, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes something happens and that thing is like a warning, don't do this. And sometimes it is like a little test, like how bad do you want it? And I love that your wife Morgan stepped up, as I understand the story, and she said you had that. I always think of this moment in your story as the City Slickers moment when in the beginning of that movie,
I love that movie.
Billy, it's such a good movie, and Billy Crystal's like depressed, he's finding hairs all over the place, and he's like, fuck it, I'm not gonna do this. And his wife goes, you gotta go, like go find your smile and don't come back, until you do. And Morgan did that. She said that, right? She said, don't come back until you're satisfied. Is that right?
Don't come back till you're proud. Don't come back till you're proud.
Fuck yeah.
And there was a couple of things on the line for us. I mean, we were personally having a hard fucking time in our marriage, our relationship. And for me, that was like a signal that actually this person cares for me a lot. And she cares about the condition of my relationship with myself, right? Like she knows I need to be in right relationship with myself. And the other part of that was I had a deadline, because then she and I were supposed to go straight into teaching a marriage retreat together. And which of course is like, it's kind of classic that we were having a hard time before teaching something like that. Yeah. But I had to get up and down the mountain and to the airport and to the, back to that thing before it all happened. And so there was all that risk involved, not to mention the actual risk of death that I pressed against a few times on there that
awesome, man.
Honestly has been part of the reason I haven't climbed again. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you continually to share that story, because I think that's what we're talking about. You risked a lot, you prepared, you put it all on the line, you had things happen that maybe were going to dissuade you from your path. You had other people come in and help you and then go away. It's such a good story.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Thank you for helping me kind of keep that alive in me. It was a special moment for me, and a great gift that I should have given myself years ago. And I don't regret that now because I've done it. But I knew that German guy was there, that there are a couple things in my life that I knew in the moment I needed to pay attention to, and I didn't. And one of those was writing, and another one of those was climbing. And I've had to, in my middle age, like here I am standing on the precipice of middle age. That's what he says in Dante's Inferno, right?
Yeah.
Midway point of his life.
The midway point of his life.
And the other and to that other side, like writing, like I finally have heeded the call, and it's finally starting to come together, not because I didn't have the opportunity or didn't have I just didn't have the belief in myself. I couldn't justify a world where that was important, in a world where like the success is not guaranteed, failure is almost imminent, like why do that? Why pursue that? And yet when I turn off the rationalism attached to that and have invested myself into that skill and that talent, the reward is beyond the success. I don't need success with it because it's so good. And yet I'm also pushing it into an actual like public place by trying to get it published. And whether that happens or not, I'm kind of like, I don't it doesn't really matter, because like it's like every step is its own rite of passage. Like
Yeah.
getting the material to the potential agent, finishing the first draft, going to the next writers conference, like each one of those are those kind of dragons Daniel was talking about.
When you went and pitched your stuff at the writers conference to those agents and very, very world-class agents, that was a rite of passage.
Yeah,
you tried the line, you put it on the line.
Yeah.
You know, you risked, you know, and you didn't have to do that. You know, no one was forcing you. It came from an inner call. And I just, you know, a little bit of time and energy for each one of us to just be like, is there somewhere in my life that I could create a situation like that, to in a matter of degrees? Maybe it's small, maybe it's massive. And I just think everybody probably has somewhere, if not many places in their life, where they could do that. They could come up with a challenge that would be appropriate and helpful and fit them, you know. And it's just, it's always there. There's always potential. It just takes a little time to think about it and come up with it. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, it does. I think that's absolutely right. I some of my best kind of reflective thinking was on airplanes coming to and from place when there's like no distractions.
Totally.
Open up my journal and let my brain flow, and you know, all those things. And I also do want to say, man, if you are in we're unofficially supported by the War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. You know, he mentioned that, and I know I talk about Stephen Pressfield all the time, but he in a lot of ways is a guide for me working through all this resistance. And if you know, you Daniel, but you the listener are kind of trying to figure out how to reconnect to that part of you that has like stopped dreaming about your skills, gifts, and talents being used, that's a great book. Anything by Stephen Pressfield, his work series stuff is great. And gives you, it gave me a real like understanding of the resistance that is cooked up within me and outside of me, that I interpreted as trying to stop me or as good excuses to keep me from what I really wanted. And I've never seen anywhere a better description of that battle. And that's why he calls it the War of Art, because it is a battle.
Can I share something with you on our way out here?
Yeah, man.
I've just been, as we've been talking, really thinking about, I love the idea of rites of passage. You know, it's just so good. And I should make a side note that the hero's journey has a bad rap amongst some people as being a very like male thing.
Totally, yeah.
And I think it kind of is, or can be, not to say it has to be done by men. That's not what I'm saying. A heroine's journey in this context would be still a male experience. There's an idea of the feminine journey, and this is gendering it, which does not have to be done. So I'm being sensitive around that. It's not the only way to talk about this, but there are other ways to live life and work through challenges that is not like, I'm going to impose I'm going to like conquer, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Aside from that, I just want to make that note. But one of the ways that I'm realizing personally that I recently provided myself the opportunity for a rite of passage is going to that jazz class the other night.
Yeah.
And this gets into my dreams, which is part of the inner world. I would say it's dreams, emotions, thoughts, feelings. These are inner world stuff, beliefs. And I have this recurring dream over the last 20 years of not being prepared for a musical situation and or a play. And I'm sure this is a common anxiety dream that people have. But for me, it's very specific around being at a performance and not having my lines memorized or not knowing how to read music.
Oh, wow.
And I was in this, I took myself to this jazz class, sitting in at the local college here on a class that's already 3/4 of the way through the semester. And the instructor said, come on over and check out the class. And so I go into this place, and it's a jazz ensemble class, it's a jazz band class. And there's some scattered people and playing instruments, and we're sitting down, and I sit down at the piano, and I'm looking over the shoulder of the piano player, who's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
And I'm reading this music that I used to know as a child, as a high schooler, how to read music. And he's playing piano, and I'm shadowing, talking to him, learning a little bit. And I realized this class, this like the most friendly, simple, nurturing, what's that called?
Environment?
Incubator type of environment for a jazz player, potential jazz player, is actually, come the next semester when I'll be part of that class, I'm going to be the one sitting at that piano, having to play music, being instructed.
Yeah.
And I have 3 months before class starts, you know? And it's like, now I have a goal now. But sitting at in a class, like a low level jazz class, but it's going to be as if it's going to feel the same as every other stage that hopefully I'll get to be as in a jazz musician. You know, it'll be that same feeling. It'll be that same feeling in Port Townsend when I got to sit at playing piano for that comic, you know? And I just feel like, okay, there's a great example. It's going to be, it's a goal. There's a time period before that goal comes, and it's going to be connected to my inner world. Like I get to do something right that in my inner world, in my dreams, I'm like, no, I can't read music. And I think that's a good example, just like an appropriate way that's going to, it's really helpful. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. You need, I was talking about that kind of thing with a client yesterday. It's like, you need some things to build up. Like you need to like step into a few different things that like give you that feeling of like, this is a challenge, but it's doable. And it scares the shit out of me, but it's doable. I know I'm gonna survive.
It's good.
And you need like a collection of those. Like you need to kind of like pick them up. And I man, you know, you raising your hand at that bar in Port Townsend together when the guy asked if anyone played piano. I mean, that was like, in my mind, not too dissimilar to someone going like on an airplane, like, is there a doctor on the airplane?
It was a call. That was a call to action. That was a heroic moment. I pat myself on the back. You know what I mean? I was very proud of myself in that moment. I could have come home, you know, and proud in that moment. And I found my smile. But a lot of part of me was like, you're not good enough. You don't know enough. You don't know what you're doing. It's sketchy. You know what I mean? But it's like, fuck it, you know?
Yeah.
I'm going to go for it today.
It was beautiful. I think about that every once in a while. Like I really do. Like I'll be walking around my dog at night or something. I think about that moment and really proud of you and happy for you that you got to experience that.
That was one of the coolest moments of my life for sure.
It was rad to get to witness it for sure too. That was awesome.
Thanks for helping create it. You know? And your moment on Half Dome, like I'm serious. That's one of the coolest stories. Anyways, good for us. We're doing a good job.
We're doing it. And
we're privileged and blessed to be able to do that for sure.
Totally. Oh, look at, I have a special guest, my dog. I guess she must need to go outside again. Okay.
Goldie, tell us about yourself. Goldie, you are a golden retriever. You are Ronald's pup. You do not speak. Welcome, Goldie.
I think she is. I think she's a person trapped inside here. I think this is probably, 100%. Some number of reincarnations. She's come back. The way
your dog moves is human-like. It's a little weird sometimes. All right, let's get out of here.
All right, man. Good to see you. Thank you for getting this put together. Daniel, I want to thank you. You're in charge of getting the guests on here with us. And Daniel was one of those guys that I really wanted on. And you made it happen, dude. Thanks to you, man.
Shout out. You're welcome. My pleasure. Good job. You also. Shout out to his assistant, Chrissy. Yeah, she is amazing. She not cold called me. She called me. She texted. I don't know. Nice. She was on it. She awesome.
Went through it. Yeah.
And she okay. One more thing. Sorry, but she had a little moment, as I understand it, is about 3 months ago on Daniel's Instagram popped up hey, we are hiring another team member.
Yeah.
And I looked at that and I thought, should I apply for that? You know, because what a cool opportunity. Yeah. I didn't. Well, she's the one that applied and got the job.
Oh, nice. Good for her.
We had a little moment talking on the phone.
What was her name?
Her name's Chrissy.
Chrissy. Hey, congrats, Chrissy. Good job. Yeah, thanks for your help.
She's awesome. Anyways,
yeah.
Props to her.
Awesome, man. Hey, we'll talk soon. All right. Thanks, Daniel.
See ya.
Appreciate you, man. Grace, peace.